remember when I was learning about the human brain, I learned about how humans like to avoid pain and pursue pleasure. They want happiness, they want instant gratification, they want all of that, but they want to avoid pain. And luckily, if you realize this, you can kind of hack the system. What I mean by this is you can use this knowledge to your advantage in making decisions because you know that your human mind is going to gravitate towards avoiding pain. However, I've found in my life, more often than not, I've been driven by instant gratification, what will make me happy temporarily, and it never works. And so this is what I wanted to talk about today: why we shouldn't strive for happiness. So, welcome to Creating a Life You Love with Adriana. And today I really wanted to talk about what creating a life you love means because I picked this title about 2 years ago. Didn't really know what this podcast was gonna, what was gonna come out of this podcast. Didn't really know I would talk this much about Jesus and about my faith and my relationship with God, but I have. And I think there's a common misconception that once you become a Christian, you are just going to be happy all the time. Life is going to be great. You don't have to struggle that much because God is going to take away all of your pain. And this is very untrue. This is very untrue. And so there's kind of this false gospel that people could be receiving Jesus just because they don't want to suffer, just because they think, if I'm saved, I won't have to suffer. Yay. When that's not the case. And this is not to discourage you by any means, but this is simply just to talk about how we should not strive for happiness. We should strive for peace. And Jesus does give peace. There's a different type of struggling. When I was not walking with Jesus, the type of struggling I had was very lonely, very, very painful. I didn't see a way out. I would be so frustrated with myself. I didn't think I had anyone on my side. It was just a different type of pain. And now I still struggle after becoming a Christian. One example is anxiety. I have certain phobias and anxieties that have come out in my life, and after becoming a Christian, things didn't just change overnight. Now, that's some people's testimony, but for me, I found that I've needed to embrace this pain. Before I was a Christian, I would push down emotions inside. I would block them away. I wouldn't want to address them. And so the anxiety just got worse and worse and worse. Now, I'm not keeping the pain in the darkness. I'm bringing that pain out because I know striving for happiness by pushing the pain down is never going to give you peace. It's never going to give you peace. And when I was younger, the ways that I would try to strive for happiness was, posting pictures of me on social media, trying to seek validation, or looking really super good one day so that maybe someone will compliment me, or even subtler things like working out a ton so that I'd have endorphins and I'd be happy and, I'd be having this adrenaline kick in, right? Or listening to music every second of the day because I just wanted this joyful happiness. But the minute the music shut off, I'd be sad. And so as a culture, we continuously strive for happiness through the food that we can order online that's instantly, delivered to our doorstep, or the way we can just click our fingers and Amazon will deliver a package to us. We just want to be happy and we don't want to feel the pain. But let me tell you that when I've strived to know God better, and when I've strived to understand my emotions, and when I've strived for peace, I, in return, feel this inner joy. Not all the time, because there's still days, but I have this hope that things will be okay, that the Lord is working all things out for my good, even if I may suffer temporarily. And so I'm not saying to go out and seek suffering. But what I am saying is when it does come your way, just like 1 Peter 4:12 says, do not be surprised by the fiery trials that come. Instead, bring it to the Lord. Bring those to the Lord and use that pain as a way to get closer to Him. When I was going through a really dark season in my life in middle school, my parents were really worried about me. And, we've talked about it many times since, and they've told me that their relationship actually got closer because I struggled, because suffering, because pain brings people together unlike any other emotion. Because when you're suffering, when you're in pain, all you want to do is call a friend. All you want to do is be close to someone. You want to talk to someone. And so it can bring you so close. Imagine if you can have that with Jesus, with the Lord. Imagine. Jesus didn't come to this world to take away all of our, hardships and the things that, come our way, but he did come to provide a way to save us eternally, to provide a way that we can bring all our suffering to him and we can feel peace. We still have the enemy in this world until Jesus comes and, defeats the enemy for good. We still have Satan in this world. And because of that, there's still going to be suffering. Humans have free will. The enemy can kind of guide them towards doing things. We see in the Bible, it says in Ephesians, don't know where, but it says, for our war is not against flesh and blood, but of the, dark principalities of the air. So, like the spiritual forces. So, when someone is doing something very wrong, like murder or adultery, there is like this spirit behind there. We have the free will to give into that, but there is this dark force behind that, which is the enemy. Jesus didn't promise that we'll never suffer, but we see in Philippians 4, Paul says that we can have peace in every circumstance. So Jesus may not have promised we won't ever suffer, but he did promise we can have peace in all of it. And even if you don't have peace in one moment, you can come later to look at things through the Lord's perspective. You can bring things to him, and that peace can come, even if you don't have it right now. There have been many times where I wasn't seeing things clearly. I wasn't seeing things through God's perspective. And so, because of that, I didn't have peace. I'll tell you about, this recent time where my boyfriend and we had some like uncomfortable, painful conversations about things that have happened in our past that have made us who we are now and that have conditioned us to believe certain things. For me, it's conditioned me to be shameful and to feel guilt from, past sexual sins that I've done. And so that conversation is not easy whatsoever. But when we had that conversation, when these things were brought to light, I prayed so powerfully after that because I was just so like brought to my knees by how unbearable the suffering can sometimes be. And it brought me so close to God. And something also amazing that has come out of uncomfortable and hard conversations with my boyfriend is that we've become so much closer. And not only that, but my friends have also been so much closer to me. Because of my relationship with my boyfriend, I'm also growing my relationship with my friends because it's amazing to have wise counsel. I'm, growing relationships with women who are older than me who can give me like wisdom how to navigate relationships and date for marriage and all of that. So not only do difficult times bring my boyfriend and I closer together, but it brings God and I closer together. It brings other people that are my friends closer to me. So I'm seeing the fruit that is coming out of this very difficult time. And you may be in a circumstance where you do not see the light at the end of the tunnel. Something really hard is going on. Maybe it's chronic illness. Maybe it's, whatever it is. You're just suffering. I encourage you to bring that pain to the Lord. Something that I was talking with my counselor about was that anytime a negative or shameful thought comes up in my head of like something that the enemy is trying to make me feel guilty for, instead of feeding that and instead of even getting mad at myself for having that thought and thinking back to the past, what I'm doing is using that as like a little signal to like shift my brain to God. So you can actually condition yourself to kind of habit stack. Like, have you heard of habit stacking where, maybe you have to take your vitamins. So you condition yourself every time you brush your teeth because it's something you do every day. You're going to take your vitamins. So, like, something that you automatically do, you're going to stack something on top of that you don't normally do, if that makes sense. So, what I do is anytime a negative thought comes up of like really causing me internal pain, I use that as an action signal to bring it to the Lord. So I'm going, okay, I have this shameful thought, this guilty feeling coming upon me. I'm going to bring that to the Lord. And it's like this little reminder of, hey, I can pray right now. I can ask the Lord, like, Lord, please give me strength. Please help me with this thought. This was my past self. I am not the same person I was. You have made me new. Yes, there are things that I did that I regret, but you have completely transformed me. And the fact that I even am standing here knowing that what I did was wrong and changing my life, like that speaks volume. And so, like, that's what you can pray for instead of feeding into that, negative stuff, right? And then you also don't want to completely cover up the pain. And I think that's something that we like to do. We avoid making new friends because, oh, that's scary. What if they hurt me? We may avoid getting in relationships because we fear, what if we break up? Maybe we avoid having hard conversations because, oh, it's so painful. But if you think about it, all of these things that can come with pain are also so good. Like childbirth, for instance. You got a lot of difficult times. You got labor. You got all of that, right? But what do you get at the end? This like beautiful blessing. And so that's what I kind of think about when I suffer. And so, an example that I've used this recently, I was having some bitterness towards someone in my life. And whenever a painful emotion comes up, like I said, we tend to try to just leave it. Try to get away from it as quickly as possible. We try to strive for happiness. So, the old me, if I had, some bitterness or some resentment, I would be like, oh no, I'm happy. Like, I'm good. And I would cover that feeling up because I wanted to be happy. I thought that having a negative emotion made me a bad person. And so I would never actually address it. However, now I have this bitterness towards someone in my life. And I was like, okay, Lord, thank you for using this emotion to bring something up outside from inside of me and to get my attention that something is not right in my heart. So now I can forgive this person. Now I can think about, why am I bitter towards them? What is in my heart? What is the reason? Instead of just pushing it down because, oh, I can't have negative emotions. I'm a Christian. I'm not allowed to feel pain. I'm not allowed to feel negative emotions. Like, no, that's not what we do. Couldn't be further from the truth. The Lord sees us in pain. He sees us when we're suffering, when we're having negative emotions, but He can use it for His good. I've had negative emotions like this bitterness I experienced. If I wouldn't have had this bitterness come up, if the enemy wouldn't have placed this resentment in my heart, the Lord wouldn't have used this for then me to realize how I've been bitter towards many other people in my life and how I could be better at showing my love and my care and my support and like just my kindness. If I wouldn't have addressed that thought, I would have just carried it on throughout my life. And so the Lord can use that. And something that I heard recently, I think it was Sadie Robertson, she was talking about whenever she was having anxiety, whenever she would go on stage to like give a speech or preach or whatever it was, something that she said was having this anxiety pushed her to pray before she went on stage. Instead of relying on her own strength, she was praying and she was getting in close fellowship like with other people who are also praying with her, and she would just build her relationship with the Lord because of this anxiety. So it was like this good thing coming out of something that the enemy meant for harm, the Lord is using for good. And so Think about in your life, where are you avoiding pain that could potentially grow you if you didn't avoid it? Is there a hard conversation that you have to have that could really help the other person that you need to have the conversation with? Is there a job opportunity that you're really fearful of? It's bringing up a lot of negative emotions, and you may not be like happy initially when you take it because it's a learning curve and all this stuff. It might be painful, it might be uncomfortable, but you have this feeling inside that no, something good is going to come out of this. And with my relationship with my boyfriend, yeah, there have been a lot of struggles because two people coming together with a lot of baggage, it's not easy. You expect two people to to come together in marriage and not have any baggage in an imperfect world. Like you're going to have some people may have more, and so, using the painful times and the difficult conversations as an opportunity to go to the Lord has been so beautiful. So, ask yourself, where in your life are you avoiding pain that could actually propel you to be the person that God designed you to be? Creating a life you love. I thought about, changing the name, and I don't know, because it could be misinterpreted as, oh, you're supposed to be happy all the time, you're supposed to be joyful. But creating a life you love to me means that through the hard times, through the painful times, through all of that, even, the happy times too, you still have peace in your life because you know your purpose. You are bringing everything to the Lord. And so you have this peace because you have this close relationship with Him. I don't think that we should strive for happiness like the world tells us to, because when I listened to the world and when I strived for happiness, I got myself into sticky situations. I was striving for happiness by getting validation from guys. You know what that looked like? Well, let's not go into that, but it didn't look great. And it caused me a lot of insecurities, caused me a lot of pain in the end, a lot of heartbreak because I was motivated by happiness. So if you could take anything from this, I pray that you are not motivated by the instant gratifications that come our way, by the little sparkly things that seem so, cool, but really are going to leave you just destroyed. It's kind of like a hook. The fish sees the hook in the water. Oh, it's super shiny. Like, oh my goodness, what is that? And then all of a sudden, the hook grabs the fish and it's dead. Like it's at its doom. That's kind of like us. We see something super shiny and we go over to it, and all of a sudden, snap, gone. We're gone. It killed us. It literally left our brains dead, our hearts broken. We're like the fish. Whereas if we bring everything to the Lord, any decision we have to make, and we aren't motivated by instant gratification, I think our lives will be a lot better off. Like I said, don't go seeking suffering. Don't try to put yourself in situations where you're just going to suffer, like putting yourself in a dangerous situation or something like that. But instead, embracing the suffering when it comes your way, looking at it as an opportunity to grow in your relationship with the Lord, with others, to grow as a person, and like it says in Romans, actually, let's pull this out. So it says in Romans 8:18, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worthy comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us." It also says in Romans 5, 5:3, "Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. And hope does not put us to shame, because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us." So, next time you're going through suffering, you're maybe avoiding pain, whatever it may be, do not avoid it, embrace it. Look at how the Lord could be teaching you something and bring it to Him, most importantly. I hope that this week you can look at your life and see if you're trying to avoid some painful emotions or painful, conversations that could actually bear a lot of fruit in your life. I've noticed that something I've been trying to avoid is my phobia of, well, emetophobia, if you must know. Maybe you deal with that too. If you want to know what that is, look it up. But basically, I've been avoiding it. And something that they tell you when working through phobias is that you got to do exposure therapy. You got to expose yourself to it for the most part for that fear to go away. And so, this is a silly example. Well, not really silly, but I'm going on a plane this week and I'm flying to Colorado. So, super excited for that. But I am scared of my phobia in many different social settings, especially planes. I kind of want to run from that. I kind of never want to travel anywhere because I don't want to be in a plane. I don't want to be in social circumstances. I do not want to do that because this phobia can take over. But what am I going to do? Not that. I'm not going to hide. I'm going to embrace the suffering, embrace the pain because something good can come out of it. And I believe that, when I go on this plane, the Lord is going to be with me. He can comfort me. I can bring my anxiety to Him. And one day, maybe when I am able to overcome this fear, I can then help other people do the same thing with that specific fear at least. And so I look at anything that I've been through in my life and then I'm able to speak to someone else on a similar thing that they're going through just because I experienced it. Like that's pretty cool. Like that's pretty awesome that you can help someone else because you also experienced that thing. And so that's another example of something good that can come from a painful experience. You can help someone else. You can help your future children, your future nieces, nephews, like whatever it is. You can help someone who's also been through this, who's going through the same thing that you once did. So that's something that I'm personally working on and just embracing that pain, embracing that suffering and that anxiety. And I'm laughing about it now because this is something I tend to do, like laugh when, things are a little bit uncomfy or laugh when I'm a little bit nervous for my plane ride, but I know it will be okay. And so whatever you're going through, just please do not run from the pain, do not run from the suffering, and do not try to think that just because you're a Christian means you're not going to suffer. When you look in the Psalms, when you look in Job, when you look how David talked in the Psalms, how he would cry out to the Lord, bringing his complaints, bringing his agony to the Lord, he isn't hiding his feelings. He's bringing everything to the Lord. Same with Job. But you know what they do? After that, they praise the Lord. They thank the Lord. They don't just sit in their suffering, they don't just mope, they rejoice. Just like it says in Romans 5:3. We rejoice in our suffering. And that's definitely easier said than done. But whoever you are listening, I don't want you to think that if when you become a Christian or, if you're a Christian now and things start to get troublesome, suffering starts to come, I don't want you to think God failed you. Just because there are bad things happening in the world does not mean God is not good. Like I said, we have free will. The enemy is here. Humans have a choice. And because we have a choice, there's a lot of suffering. If people didn't rob and steal, we wouldn't have to lock our doors and cars. If people didn't, cheat and all this stuff, we wouldn't have trust issues. Like all of these problems stem from the ability to choose, the ability to have free will. And so God limited his power in order to give us this free will. He could control us and say, you have to love me. But if a husband forces his wife to love him, is that really love? If you say you have no other option, you can't choose to love him or not. Like love is a choice. So the Lord giving us this free will to choose, that is a choice. Yeah, suffering may come from that. And maybe your suffering is not a result of yourself. It's a result of other people, which most of the time it can be a result of other people, of generations before you, of just the world. But just because you're having difficult times in your life should not mean that you just say, okay, I'm done with a God. There's no God. it shouldn't mean that you just don't think that God is good anymore, because that it couldn't be further from the truth. Next time you are, in a season of suffering, in a time of difficulties, bring that to the Lord. I know it's hard. I know it's so difficult, but truly, like when I think back to my breakup and I brought that to the Lord, there was so much fruit that came out of that. So, with that being said, please this week, look at any area of your life, like I said earlier, that you may be avoiding pain that could actually propel you to grow and to become the person that God created you to be. And so, if you did enjoy listening, make sure to follow, subscribe, like this podcast, and I hope you can remember that the moment that you stop striving for happiness and you start striving for peace, and you embrace the suffering, that is when you can truly create a life that you love. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you